like the name implies, anybody can join it. So you don't need to take permission from anybody, fill out a form and get approved before you can join it. So it's open to public. What is the requirement? That you have to have a node, that you have to have computational facility to be able to participate. So it's called permissionless. You don't need anybody's permission. And you can participate in validating the transactions, and you have access to the entire ledger. Okay? And of course, it talks about the same things that we have been talking about: decentralized, transparent, immutable, globally available, and secure. So the examples are, the famous example is of course Bitcoin cryptocurrency. That's a public blockchain. Anybody can join it and start investing and transacting in Bitcoins, and people do. Didn't we have somebody here yesterday who was, is that person still here? No. Shubham. Anybody else who has invested or done transactions in, oh there you are. This would be a good time for you to tell us a little bit about being part of Bitcoin blockchain. Tell us about your experience loudly so everybody can hear. So everybody, we have somebody talking, so let's make sure we can all hear him. Okay.
Actually, I used to trade Bitcoin at Delta Exchange from past 2 years.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So how did you join? Tell us about that.
Ma'am, actually, I was more inclined toward finance. So first, I used to learn about stock market, and there I used to learn about fundamental and technical analysis. So when I joined stock market, then I know about Bitcoin and blockchain and all about Forex. So from there, I used to learn more about Bitcoin and joined as a part of a trader.
So you had to go through a trader to join the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. You didn't have to fill out any form or anything, or what did you have to go through?
No, ma'am. Actually, I used to trade only.
Okay. No, I'm just asking, how did you join? So everybody can understand, how do you join a public blockchain?
Ma'am, actually, I used to listen many YouTubers video about Bitcoin. So from there, I know that I can invest into Bitcoin and trade Bitcoin. So there I got to know.
So that's how you joined.
Yes.
Okay. So you needed a computer, right? A laptop, okay, and an internet connection, and that's all was needed. Okay. So that's essentially what a public blockchain is. So before you sit down, have you made money through this Bitcoin, or I hope you didn't lose it? We won't ask you how much you made, but it's good to know that you're making money. That's good.
Till now I am profitable.
Very good. May you continue like that. Good job. Thank you. So, so that's a powerful thing, right? Anybody who wants to can become a node and participate in it. So Bitcoin, then there is different platforms, and these days there is a proliferation of blockchains all over. So these are some of the use cases. Cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. We talked about decentralized finance, which is basically open financial systems focused on financial transactions, lending, and so on, and trading. We have talked about double spending a lot by this time, so we don't need to talk about it again. And non-fungible tokens are also an example of public blockchain. Non-fungible tokens are basically, they are all identical. Remember, in the Bitcoin you can have a UTXO of different amounts, right? You could have 2 or 5 or 100. NFTs are all identical, and they are, most importantly, not interchangeable. You don't trade them like you trade Bitcoins or cash or currency. So their purpose is different. Their purpose is basically for collectibles and art. So you do you own it, so it basically gives you this ownership that is yours, and nobody can tamper it and then say, oh no, okay, you don't own this, I own it, that kind of thing. Of course, the public blockchains have high energy consumption, obviously, and that's one of the criticism of blockchain, because we are all trying to be sustainable, environmentally conscious and responsible. Blockchain is not, by definition. It requires a lot of computational power. Scalability is an issue. What you can accomplish if suddenly the number of participants goes up, then things start slowing down. So it's not very scalable. Private blockchains they try to mitigate some of those challenges, that is slow transactions and scalability issues. So private blockchains are controlled by a single organization. So in that sense, there is a central authority. In that sense, they are the ones who are responsible for deciding who becomes part of this private blockchain. So it is permissioned, as opposed to public, which is permissionless. And so there is a central authority, and there is some privacy, but it's not as private as public blockchain, because here that central authority can view and can know who the different participants are. But it does have faster transaction, and that is the attraction for a lot of companies. What they do is they create, especially in supply chain, medical, finance, they create private blockchains that only assign to their partners and other business people in that realm. So then they have this ecosystem with faster transactions, which overcome some of the limitations of a public blockchain. So and of course there is more regulation, because it's usually meant for business purposes or in medical field or financial field. So there's more regulation and compliance requirements. Some examples are Hyperledger Fabric. I think I created a handout that I'll put it up on the Google class space later today. It's just, I think, a 1 or 1.5 page, just a quick note on what is Hyperfabric Ledger, who might be interested. These days there are so many examples that it's hard to keep track of. Many of you talked to me during the break and you asked some great questions, and one question was, what would I recommend in terms of blockchains? And my answer was, I really don't know, because there's so many and I'm not really tracking these, because if you are in finance or supply chain, then yes, then you are sort of looking at, okay, what are the different blockchain, private or public, available in supply chain space or finance space and so on. So again, the use cases, they run across the different sectors: healthcare, supply chain, financial, cross-border payment, complying with anti-money laundering. That's a big thing, especially for governments, because they want to prevent these kind of things as much as possible. Customs, that's part of the government activities. And then of course ERPs are beginning to adopt private blockchains. The challenges are, it is not fully decentralized, which is the big selling point of blockchain, but then you give up something to gain something. So you give up total decentralization to get faster transaction speeds. And of course, you still have this central authority, so there is some level of trust. So it's kind of like a middling thing between the traditional system and fully decentralized system. And then of course we have consortium. So it is, instead of a single organization controlling the blockchain, you have a group of companies, a group of organizations, and governments could be part of that then run that blockchain. So it's called consortium. Basically, it could be, some part of it could be public, part of it could be private. So it's just like a network of blockchains, really. And so there is multiple stakeholders, a shared control. It's permissioned, it's not permissionless. Which one is the permissionless? Public. Just making sure you guys are still awake. It is scalable, so that is the big plus for consortiums, because what you're doing is you kind of have these different blockchains linked together type of thing, so you can scale it up. Governance flexibility, which means that because you have multiple stakeholders, not one single organization is setting the rules, but instead these multiple stakeholders have to agree and then debate and sort of come up with the rules. So it's less likely to be harmful to participants compared to the private blockchains. And then these usually exist in specific industries. So manufacturing, they may have their own consortium because they have to adhere to different protocols manufacturing related. If you are in the mining, you might have a consortium. If you are in agriculture, you might have a consortium. In finance, you might have a consortium. So different industries usually come up with their own consortium because it's easier for them to manage and they know what the rules are. They can apply those rules equally. So there are some example, IBM Food Trust, which is what we talked about earlier in that Mango case. So that is an example of a consortium blockchain. And in some cases, rarely. Private individuals could join it, but it's rare. Usually these are meant for businesses and organizations. So again, use cases run from banking and energy, all kinds of things. So the challenge is, more people you have involved in something, more the management requirements go up, right? You have to manage all those relationships among different stakeholders, which can be politics comes into the picture, psychology comes into the picture, culture comes into the picture, all the non-computer science things come into the picture, or all the things that are related to us human beings come into the picture. And if the governments are involved, especially when we are talking about cross-border, which a lot of the supply chain is these days, right? I mean, think of even a clicker, it might have parts manufactured in different parts of the world, and then they arrive and then they are assembled and sold as a unit. So if you have a consortium, you have to make sure the government compliance is there. So all of that gets very complex. Okay, so usually the type of blockchain is built on top of whether it's permissionless or is it permissioned. And permissionless are they're opened, free access, users are identified by their avatar. It's avatar, right? I think we all started saying avatar after that movie came out. Avatar has been around we've been using that word for millennia now. And usually public blockchain. Permissioned are, of course, authorized, restricted. Users are associated to well-known identities because it's permissioned. They have to know who is entering into this blockchain. And like I said, it's very limited entry. Then, so this is just a quick review of summary of what we were talking about. So access, control, examples and use cases. So public blockchains, we were talking about cryptocurrencies and NFTs. Private are usually in business scenarios, and consortiums are ones, sort of public private kind of enterprises where governments are also involved. Usually that's where you'll find consortium. Hybrid, as the name suggests, it's a combination of the two, so that has become a new type of blockchain, even though one would think consortium also could be a hybrid, but these days if you pick up any literature, they talk about this as a separate thing, so I thought I'll include it. So it basically has the best of public and private and tries to avoid the worst of both. So it allows certain data to be public and accessible while other data remains private. So how it is done, of course, again depends on the purpose, the people or the entities involved. So it's partial decentralization, control over data access and privacy, and scalable. So that is why it becomes attractive to a lot of businesses, because scalability is something that most businesses are interested in, that if their number of transactions go up, number of customers go up or whatever, then how can you scale it up quickly? The use cases, again, not surprising. Financial industry, healthcare is huge in blockchain, because healthcare, at least in the US and I think even in India, the regulatory requirements are becoming more and more stringent. So therefore, how do you keep the data secure? Because what happens is a lot of the data is digital in United States. So when I go to the doctor will be sitting there and entering whatever are my symptoms and the conversation and notes, and they'll, all of that is there, and they'll try and share it with their network. So if I go and see a different doctor, that doctor will have access to my previous visit and so on. However, the security of these is open to cyber attacks very much, and it happens a lot. So what happens is the liability is very high. So they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Nobody does that, right? No business does that. It's because the liability is so high that they have to figure out ways to keep the data as secure as possible, and blockchain becomes one of the solutions because it's more secure amongst existing possibilities as of now. These advantages, more flexible and combines transparency with privacy. So nothing very surprising here. It's kind of if we understand what the difference between public and private is, those are the two main types. Everything else is more of a combination of the two. And consortium, the only difference is that you have multiple stakeholders, including generally governments, are involved. So this is a summary, and then I just wanted to throw this in. So, oops, what did I do? Yeah. So you see all these, I didn't even decided not to even get into it, because everybody comes up with their own version of type of blockchain. So we can be here, till cows come home and still not be done. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that there were two main varieties, and then consortium and hybrid are combination of public and private. Okay, so time for our, ready? Okay. Again, I'm so sorry about the small font. It says, which type of blockchain is best suited for decentralized cryptocurrency system like blockchain? Public? Yes, that is correct, public, because it's transparent, accessible to everybody, decentralized, and anybody can participate. Okay, the next one is, in which type of blockchain is access restricted to pre-approved? Very good, private. Describe, that was, let me see if I can, describe one key difference between public and private blockchain in terms of access control and decentralization. Okay.
Consortium is managed by a group of pre-approved members. They have access to the data, whereas in public, everyone is a participant and everyone has access to data.
Everybody has access to data, but it's encrypted, so you really don't know. But in private, sometimes, depending on which private blockchain and for what purpose and who are the participants, the identities could be available because they need to know who they're doing business with. So that is the main difference between public and private. Very good. And then the next one was an example where private blockchain would be more appropriate than a public blockchain. Healthcare, okay. Very good. Why?
Healthcare, defense database.
Defense would be good. Yeah, actually that's a great example. Defense supply chain, because you have the governments and the private sector, because somebody else is doing the manufacture, but the government has to set the rules for contracts and so on. So typically those kind of scenario also would be a good idea, or either a consortium or a private, both of them would be, but not a public one, because you don't want anybody to come in and see, okay, what transactions, what are taking place, even if you don't know who exactly they are. Okay, very good. So now let's talk a little bit more about non-fungible tokens. I have to say I had never heard the word fungible before I started becoming aware of something called NFTs, which came about, what, 3 or 4 years ago it started, and then suddenly it exploded. So I don't know if you read about that people were selling all kind of things, like a cartoon character is now an NFT and people are paying insane amount of money. So for example, I think I have it later on. So NFTs became such a craze because people thought, oh, if I can own this cartoon character or this picture or that picture, then suddenly I'll become millionaire. And for some people did, you know, it depends on the timing. If you're lucky enough in your timing, you did make a lot of money, but after that craze died out and it's back to the normal. So what is NFT? It's basically unique digital assets that are stored in blockchain. So they represent the ownership. So it's kind of like having a certificate of ownership. I don't know if any of you collect, like we used to collect stamps as a kid, right? So we didn't really have like certificate, but if you owned a stamp, it was yours. So now it's NFT would represent that I own this stamp, or I own this music, or this artwork, or this house, or whatever it may be. The main difference is it cannot be exchanged on a one-to-one basis, unlike cryptocurrencies, which are interchangeable and identical in value. So one Bitcoin is the Bitcoin in however many transactions you might do, the Bitcoin remains one Bitcoin, right? But NFT value can go up or down, just like it's kind of like an investment, really. So its value could go up and down. And it's often, usually without surprise, it's used for things which value can go up or down, usually the art and music and creative works, but it can also represent physical assets. It cannot be exchanged or replaced with another. So I can't exchange one NFT I own about, let's say, cartoon character with somebody else NFT with a digital art. I could buy and sell them using cryptocurrencies, but that's a different transaction, but I'm not directly interchanging. NFTs use blockchain to provide proof of ownership and authenticity. Again, it comes back to the basics of blockchain, why it exists. And they cannot be divided into smaller units. So in other words, I can't own half the cartoon character or half the music or half the art kind of thing. And they have smart contracts, can have smart contracts embedded in them, allowing creators to earn royalties. So just let's say you wrote a novel or a poem or whatever, so you can create an NFT and then you can collect royalties, just like in a publishing world also. So far so good, NFT. So it's another type of blockchain application. And so here are some examples. So I was searching for examples and I found this. So this is a picture that this person who goes by the name Beeple, and this artwork is called Every Day is the First 5,000 Days, and it's sold for $69 million. I don't know how many crores is that? Gazillion crores, right? In 2021. And basically what this is a collage of different pictures he was taking every day, and then he put that collage together in one, and that became a thing. Imagine having so much money to spend that you would spend $69 million for a bunch of pictures collage. But I guess some people have too much money, they don't know what to do with it. Did you hear about this recent case about a month ago where I think it was a software developer, I think it was an Indian too, I'm not sure, who paid some amount, insane amount of money for a banana, real banana. Yeah, you heard? In an auction. So I guess that's what happens when you have too much money. I wouldn't know, none of us I think are here, unless there is that Bitcoin person, Shivam is Shivam, when you make that amount of money, please don't do things like this. So anyway, so this is an example of NFT that he created, and that NFT was bought by somebody by paying $69 million. And then we have music and video artists like this person. I have no idea, I've never heard his music. Has anybody heard their music? No? Okay. They created and released that album as NFT, and basically what they did was, if you buy this NFT, you get some perks like front row seat in the concert, or entry to meet with the artist and things like that. So basically the point is, people are great at coming with these ways to market and use things, anything to make them more profitable. So NFT is one of the new things now, where the same thing used to be done before also, right? You could buy passes to go backstage and so on, but now they're doing it through NFTs. So I guess it's wider, like more people have access to those NFTs, and therefore the people who are doing these things, they have wider access to the people ready to spend their money. In gaming, again, those of you who are gamers, you might know that NFTs are being used for people to own some gaming characters, so nobody else can own their gaming character. Now this is something that actually I was talking to as part of my research, I was talking to one of the developers, and they were just getting into NFT space. So I was asking them, what is it? This is 3 years ago when it was just starting. And so he gave a very interesting example that you could have a piece of land and you could cut it into very, very small pieces, and that each small piece of land becomes an NFT. So you can trade just like you trade on a stock exchange, different things, usually money. You can trade land. So I own it today, but then I sell it at a slightly higher price to somebody else as an NFT. So the idea was that real estate, which typically is static, right? I mean, you own land, but it's a certain amount of size, or you own a house, but now you can break that into smaller pieces. So I could own, for example, 2-inch square of this house, or 1-inch square of this land, or whatever it is, right? So the idea is that it is supposed to make things more democratic, right? I mean, more people can have access to the land or the house to trade. So if I can't buy the whole house or a whole piece of land because I don't have that amount of money, I can still buy a small part of it and then trade it and then hopefully make money. So that is the idea, which I thought is an interesting way. It's kind of like disruption in the real estate business, right? Because real estate, you don't think like that. You don't think of pieces of a house or pieces of a land. But having these new things like NFT makes it possible to trade things like, maybe one day it will be possible to have small piece of Mona Lisa be an NFT, right? 1 inch or 1 centimeter or 1 millimeter square of Mona Lisa painting. I own it, and some, who knows? So the point is, technology is one thing, but then the real creativity comes from people coming up with ways to use these technologies to do something different, or make more money, or make something more efficient. That's where the real creativity comes into the picture. So hopefully, or maybe one of you or all of you would come up with some ways of using these technologies that makes somebody's life easier, but hopefully not doing that very first thing, please. That makes me very sad. Imagine what you could do with $69 million, right? Ooh, okay. The other place where NFTs are being used is blockchain domain names, and then of course intellectual property and licensing. So any patents, copyrights, publishing, and so on. So you could have NFTs. Like I said, if you wrote a poem or a novel or a paper or whatever, you can create an NFT for it and you own it, and if anybody uses it, you get royalties from it. Okay, so nothing is without challenges and criticism, right? So I'll give you a minute to read while I get some water, and then tell me what you think is the If you can see it, can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you think most businesses worry about environmental impact? So, which is unfortunate, right? I mean, we are seeing left and right. Right now in California, LA is burning. It's burning because of the dryness, and it's dry because usually this is the time we get a lot of rains in California coastal, because I've lived there for now almost 30 years, and winter the rains start around mid-November or beginning of November all the way through March, but more and more it's less and less rain. I remember I used to go on walks. I live in a place which is very close to wilderness, like 5 minutes and I'm in a forest type of thing, and I used to be able to walk to this nice lake, and there used to be all these birds, and you could spend hours there. But last 10-12 years the lake has been dry because it hardly rains, and there's not enough rain. 3 years ago 22 is when I was here last. So 22, when I was here in January, that's when it really rained a lot in California. So when I went back, I was so happy when I went for my walk. That lake was not full, but at least there was enough water to be lake and for birds to be back again, but it's dry again. My point is that we see the environmental impact and its results everywhere. I'm sure those of you who have lived in Allahabad for a long time, you probably notice it, the change in weather and so on. But we keep talking about it, right? But how many of us, we might be doing individual, right? You switch off the lights when you remember, and you minimize your electricity and gas fuel expenditure to save the planet. But that's hardly like a drop in the bucket, because majority of the expenditure or on this majority of the environmental impact happens from the industrial side. But industrial side usually, why would they, right? Their thing is profit, and that profit is tied to the stakeholders or stockholders like you and I, right? So we also want, if I invested in something, I want my investment to do well, right? Forget about environmental impact. My investment should be at least this person. So in that sense, we all are part of this problem and part of the solution also. So I'm not here to basically solve the problem. It's way beyond me. There are smarter minds and smarter people hopefully working on it. But blockchain definitely is not a part of that solution in that sense. Nor is the, because I have to say this, a lot of my students and so on, they come and talk to me, and they're very environmentally conscious, and that's good. But they don't realize even the smartphones we use, every click and every like and every comment you put on the smartphone, do you know how much impact it has, negative impact it has on the environment? Most of us don't think about it, but every time you are clicking on something and liking something or putting a comment, that's going into some servers, and then there are backup servers and backup of backup servers spread all over the world that are consuming humongous amounts of electricity and water to keep those servers cool and keep it running, just so this like I sent to my friend is stored somewhere, so my friend can see, oh yeah, I'm a good friend because I liked his or her comments. My point is that most of the technology that we have is part of the problem in that sense. At least I feel we should be aware, even if we're not able to do something directly, but I feel at least we should talk about it more, which is what I'm doing, and slightly going off topic, or maybe not. So coming back to the challenges of NFTs, we have environmental impact, not surprising. Volatility, this is the reason why it was such a craze few years ago, but it has died out, because a lot of people initially did make money, like Beeple guy and some of those people, but they were the lucky ones. After that, people realized this is all nonsense, right? So the prices have fluctuated widely, which is not a good thing. If it's not predictable, that makes it harder for investment, right? Fraud and scams, storage risks. So this is if you lose sort of the wallet key, which actually is not just for NFT, it's true for any of the other things. Do any of you guys watch Big Bang Theory, the show? You guys know Sheldon?
Yeah,
Sheldon Cooper. So some of you, I'm talking about a TV comedy show called Big Bang Theory, where you have this bunch of guys who are very nerd, and there's one of them is an Indian guy too. So there was an episode about they suddenly realized that they had this cryptocurrency way back, and they had stored it on a laptop, but now they can't find the laptop, so they end up losing a lot of money because they don't have that laptop where they stored that key. So it just to illustrate that this happens a lot more. There was another case in UK where this gentleman, he lost I think about 200 million something. His cryptocurrency was worth that much, so he suddenly realized, oh, you know, I have. So then he couldn't find where he had stored his key that he needed to unlock the whole thing, so he didn't have it. So these are sad stories. You feel sad for these people, but I mean, this is a real person. Sheldon is a made-up character. So what else? Legal, of course. NFTs may or may not comply with actual legal ownership. So that's where the scam and fraud comes in. You may think you're buying something and now you are the legal owner, but you may not be. So that's where the fraudsters are looking for ways to defraud you. Okay, so tokenized blockchain. So like, so as the name suggests, it could be token, but NFT is a type of token, but it could be fungible tokens as well. And the examples are Ethereum, and use cases are like I was talking about in real estate, right? You can have tokens for a small piece of land or a small piece of house, etc. Or for artwork, like I said, small piece of Mona Lisa could be owned by, you know, you and I, and so on. So let's see. Time for another check of knowledge. Oops. So the first one is, which of the following is not a characteristic of NFT? You guys are really good at this. Okay, yeah, it cannot. NFT can be divided into smaller units is false. Okay, let's see what's the other one. Which type of asset is typically associated? All of the above. What is the potential future use of NFTs beyond art and collectibles? All of the above, yeah. So again, you know, the use of something is only limited by your own creativity and looking at things beyond what is normally possible. And then, so here we kind of have a summary of what we have been talking about. So it's considered a transformative technology. Usually we apply these words a lot to different technologies, but it truly is, because cryptocurrencies have disrupted the financial markets in a big way, because suddenly you don't need any middlemen. So banks, when it first came out and started happening, the banks had to think, the big banks, you know, how do you survive? What do you do? So part of it is creating the consortiums and so on, so becoming part of it in that sense and providing some oversight and some kind of monitoring and setting some rules, so you are not completely a non-entity suddenly. Wide-ranging applications in pretty much most industries, and of course there are a lot of challenges which we will talk about more, but there are a lot of smart people also working on figuring out the solutions. Hopefully also the environmental impact as a problem. We'll see. So I think we have talked about this quite a lot already, so we know that. So So again, same thing, why security, transparency and decentralization matter. So I'm gonna skip. So we're gonna take just a quick look at some of the use cases, and we are supposed to stop at 5, right? Is that what Dr. Sahu said? Okay, okay, so we'll, so this first one is the Walmart's blockchain case study. The idea or the goal there was to improve food safety and reduce the contamination time. So I think, were you the gentleman who told us about 0.2 seconds? There was somebody who was telling us earlier. They were right. So basically the idea of implementation was that they were able to reduce the tracing time for a particular product, in this case a mango, from days to mere seconds. So that's phenomenal, right? For a business such as Walmart, that can mean a huge bunch of lawsuits to just being proactive and addressing the solution and recalling the product right away. Financial systems, of course, the main objective there for using blockchain is to prevent single point of failure, because if central authority, if they are shut down, then pretty much everything gets shut down. So imagine if Indian, what is the name? Indian Reserve Bank, IRB, in most Reserve Bank of India, RBI, thank you. I remember when I first went to US, I had to deal with them. So, so most governments have a financial body such as that, right, an equivalent. And if that gets shut down, then you have chaos. Same thing in the energy sector. Most governments are the one who are in charge of energy distribution and so on. So if those get hacked, then that again creates, can you imagine the chaos? So that's essentially why most of these blockchain solutions are being considered and adopted in industry like that. Voting system. So this is not something that comes right away into our minds, because it's not directly business related. It's more of a social thing that government, a service that the governments provide for the citizens to be able to vote fairly and efficiently. So the centralized, we all hear the stories, right, everywhere in the world that, you know, I didn't win because somebody manipulated the votes, and they may or may not have manipulated the votes. So usually if you have a single authority or the people in it, they are easy to bribe and, you know, open to manipulation. So the idea is that how do you make the voting as foolproof and tamper-proof as possible? So blockchain is being considered, and in fact, a country like Estonia, that's not what I would have thought of, because you don't think of Estonia when you think of state-of-the-art technologies, right? Like usually South Korea or Japan are the ones that come into mind, because they usually are ahead of the curve in technology adoption. But Estonia actually uses blockchain for their election system, and that's a case study in itself. So I think other governments probably should adopt it, but it's a big investment for the governments also, and sometimes they don't want to, right? So that's another thing, that it may be in their interest to not adopt something that is tamper-proof. Healthcare records, again, the problem traditionally is, the reason I set it out like problem solution example is because as a most of us are, you know, in industry or sectors in business type of realm. So as I said before, you have to first know what is the problem you are facing before you can begin to look at the solution. And you would think that would be fairly easy. I worked as a consultant. I consulted with some companies as part of my job, not part of my job, but I was called to consult with some companies. And one of the biggest things you see all the time is they really don't know what the problem they are facing. Or if they know, nobody's listening to that person who is telling them this is the problem. So they need an outside consultant to come in and tell them exactly what they should know or do know, but they didn't listen to this person because this person either doesn't have the authority or the charisma, or it's not in the self-interest of the other people to listen to that. So usually if a company can figure out what is the issue that they have that they're trying to solve, then everything else becomes easier, including what solution should be applied and whether or not blockchain would be a good solution. But that's easier said than done. So in healthcare, the problem is the patient data. The sensitive patient data is usually on central servers, which makes it a target for hacking. Every other day you hear about this medical company or that insurance company got hacked and so many customer data became public. So the blockchain is usually being considered for that reason. And examples are, these are most likely, this is what do you think, what kind of blockchain is this likely to be?
This is like consortium.
Either private or consortium, yeah. Most likely consortium, because usually in healthcare the government is involved in some way, either the state governments or the central government. So usually when the governments enter the picture, you're talking about consortiums. And then decentralization also is a big feature of a blockchain solution that becomes attractive. Okay, so we talked about healthcare. Then cloud storage is another place where blockchain solution is being considered to prevent, oops, what did I do? Data breaches. So problem is we have, so most of us are either on the Google Drive or Amazon servers or, oh, what is that other thing? Oh my God. I have this, I use it all the time and I'm drawing a blank.
Alibaba.
The what?
Alibaba Cloud.
Alibaba is another. It came out as free service at first and then I'm drawing a complete blank, and just this morning because it's a cloud and oh God, I keep saying, in my mind keeps saying blockchain, but that's not the word, because anyway. My point is that there are a number of cloud storage facilities that all of us use. Sometimes there's an annual subscription fee. Even Google now charges money, right? It's no longer free. And they keep increasing because all of us are taking pictures all the time and we are collecting all this data. So every few months my Google tells me you're running out of space, so upgrade it to this one, and we all do, right? Because are we going to lose those photographs that we are never going to look at? Or so that is another, those of you who are students of human psychology, something to think about. We take these gazillion pictures every day. How many of them we actually look at again? So thank God for that Google feature where it tells you every day, right? 7 years ago you were doing this, or so that's actually something very creative. I mean, kudos to whoever in the Google team who came up with that idea that let's, provide this service to people so they don't delete their photographs and therefore will keep paying for the upgrades every few months. So the problem with the cloud storage is that even though I don't think any good cloud storage has a single server, that would, but they still have limited number of servers because they are trying to cut down their costs. So security breach is going to be very harmful. So basically the idea is that you split the data into fragments, encrypt them, and then distribute them across the node, and only the data owner has the key to deconstruct. So it's a different way. The transaction, it's not a monetary transaction here, but the transaction is the part of the data that I have stored on the cloud. It's not available in one big block, but it's smaller pieces that have been encrypted then in different blocks, and then it can be assembled whenever I need it. So these are the examples, Filecoin and IPFS, that are used as blockchain platforms for cloud storage. Where do you think this kind of cloud storage would be useful? Do you and I need to use this? Probably not, but what kind of business do you think should consider?
Mobile, we are seeking mobile to the cloud,
Right.
one drive.
So till it becomes affordable, right now these things are not affordable. So if you're a business, what kind of business do you think should consider these kind of
servers and keeping the database and distributed in cloud, so we don't need to maintain. And like there's one messaging techniques and all security, like credit card data we are keeping in some, like we have some services we are keeping, and we are keeping credit card data which is going to the log, right? We need to put the log. So going SFS system, it's a cloud system, and multiple ways.
So basically, again, the same kind of industries, healthcare definitely comes to mind. If you're an insurance company or a bank, right, or credit card company, and so instead of storing the client or customer data on these cloud storage, which you do on Amazon or Google or whatever, if you can use a blockchain solution, that makes it much more secure. So that I think that's what you were saying, right? Yeah,
Some
yeah.
few data they are using on blockchain, or not all. Like when we're keeping a client information, the document, then we are keeping a blockchain. Otherwise, if we're talking about transaction, we are keeping some services like.
Okay. So what you're describing is some data is on the blockchain and other is not, which kind of is the hybrid model in a way, right? So instead of, because it's the transaction cost versus actual cost. So blockchain has slower transactions, so you only want to keep something that you're not going to need to access every day or every second kind of thing. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So then resilience in critical infrastructure. What do we mean by critical infrastructure? Like energy grid, nuclear grid, defense systems, telecommunication networks, medical alerts, all of those kind of things are usually considered critical, water systems and so on. So again, the same problem. If they can collapse if the central servers are hacked, corrupted or shut down. So usually that's when you consider blockchain solutions. And it also ensures redundancy and resilience. Can somebody tell me what do we mean by redundancy and resilience?
Redundancy,
Duplicates.
and resilience means so that if there is a turbulent environment, the entity can get disturbed, but it is having a characteristic that will again come back.
How quickly can it come back? Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very well explained. Thank you. And so here we have some examples are energy grid management platforms like this, to decentralized energy trading and so on and so forth. So there are more and more and more of these use cases coming up. So we are getting close to 5. I did have a discussion activity plan, but I think I'm going to skip that. And tomorrow we are going to get more into organizational view of the security and how blockchain addresses. So right now we've been talking more broadly. So now we are going to go a little bit more into an organization. So I don't want to start a new topic with only 5 minutes left. So is that okay if we stop? So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I want to thank you again for being such wonderful audience and asking great questions and answering every question that I asked you. So that makes me very happy. So thank you again. I'll see you tomorrow 9:30, right? Tomorrow is 9:30 in the morning. So hopefully it won't be foggy. So okay, thank you so much. And I think what are we supposed to? Are we supposed to wait for Professor Sahu, right? So do we wait here, or I don't know, where is? Do you know Ankita or is Ayushi? Where are we supposed to? Okay, so everybody, we wait here. So we are done. We finished a little bit early. Okay, so.